lose all sense of reality and enter another world. Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.
Colin, believe it or not, we got a toe. Topic of the week, ladies and gentlemen. It comes from Gabe. Gabe writes in and says, "Dear Podcast Beyond crew, Beyond. I recently went back to listen to older Beyond podcasts, the TGS 2011 episode in particular. A question came up about if a game about 9/11 could be done. I personally think it can be, although it would not specifically be about the actual moment. It could focus around the 9/11 moment. Perhaps you play as a firefighter who was there at Ground Zero and how he and people around him deal with the aftermath, as well as a story type of games similar to the Walking Dead games. Now that more story-driven games have come out, do you think a 9/11 game could be done and done well?" You are both right in the thick of it.
Yeah.
I'm Greg Miller, middle of the country. You were both in New York.
I was in New York City. I was on my roof on 27th and 3rd Street in Manhattan, and I watched the towers come down that day with tears in my eyes. It's weird for me to be like, I think this could work as a video game because I don't know where, and it's not even because like, oh, I think it's a sensitive thing, which of course I do. But I feel like making something that would be like a 10-hour game out of the event, like I don't know where that happens. Like where does the gameplay happen? Like the firefighters really were there a little during where most of them died, and after the fact, which was basically just a lot of like cleanup. And I don't know if like moving smoldering rocks to find bodies is a fun game,
compelling game.
Yeah, I don't know if that, you know.
I like the idea. I've said this before, I think. I thought maybe, I don't remember if I said in that episode, that I think you could do a 9/11 game. And I agree, like, just because, you know, we are, you know, my dad's a New York City firefighter, and, like, he was there, and, like, you know, it's, you know, he's very lucky to be alive. Most of his firehouse is dead, or was dead that day. And we discussed this on Conversation with Colin, actually.
It's come up a few times in different things.
But, so, like, you know, it would be hypocritical of me to say, like, you know, I really believe that nothing's out of bounds with fiction. And that includes the things that affected me personally.
Sure.
So, yeah, 9/11's fine for you to do whatever you want with. I think the cool approach, and I don't know how people would feel about this, is to say, like, what if you play as a CIA agent or someone who, like, in the days leading up to 9/11, you learn about it and try to stop it but can't? You know, like, some sort of, like, espionage game or some sort of, like, you know, adventure style, like you said, Walking Dead style, Quantic Dream style game where it happens anyway.
Yeah.
You know, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
But
it would have to be, I mean, you would take a few creative leaps there, though, right? Like, and it would have to be very revisionist historian. But it's odd because you and I are more closely tethered to this event, but we have no problem with, like, you know, these alternate future history and all these things come out, these games come out that it's like, hey, it's World War II, but with dragons. And you're like, oh, cool, this is fun, 8.5. Like, but then something like this we're a lot closer to. So it's harder for me to kind of separate from that.
No, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. I just don't, I'm not even sure it's about taste. I really think, like you said, it's about what the f*** is the game going to be.
Right.
You know? Like, and I think we might have missed our window as well.
See, I think, well, the window I think actually gets bigger, right? Because I played a game like what you're describing. I remember playing on PC when I was growing up a game that was the Titanic. It was a similar idea, right? Like I was a time traveler or whatever. I landed on the Titanic and I was trying to stop it and I couldn't. Like no matter what, I think the Titanic sinks. And so I think the further, in like you're talking about World War II, the further you get away from the event, the more I think you could do something with it. But I mean, I don't know if it's I don't want to say there'll never be a game based on it, right? I could see totally like an indie Flight 93 game, right? Of like trying to figure out how to stop terrorists on a plane or whatever.
Or I mean,
I think really what you're going to see more of as we get a little bit removed from the fact is characters whose life changes based on that day, right? You know what I mean? Somebody who was in the CIA when, like, and I'm just talking about a cutscene beginning backstory where that was it. They let somebody through. That's why they're this hard-ass anti-terrorism person, and now they're out of that.
That makes sense. Like, there's sort of like a referential treatment there where you're like, this is the daughter of somebody who blah, 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 blah.
Right.
It makes more sense. And I think the reason...
Villains. Yeah. Right, who lost somebody there, who then are, like, out to stop all terrorism.
You know, like World War II and World War I, they lasted ages compared to 9/11, which was a day. Yeah. You know, and, like, all of the activity that happened that day, separating the war of, the war in Iraq and all that kind of stuff, which obviously has gone on to create its own sort of subsect of games. It's really just a day. And like the Titanic's a different story because it's human error. right? So
Yeah.
I'm not saying like one gets a free pass over the other.
Sure.
I can just sort of see where these things get pushed under what umbrellas. Like human error of the Titanic makes it sort of feel like here's a natural disaster that was going to happen no matter what because there's ice and there's a boat, and when those two things collide, there's death.
Yeah.
But with 9/11, it's like there were terrorists, and whose fault was that, and how far back does this go, and who pissed off who, and what could have been averted and saved, and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think like just a video game of you like platforming out of a fiery building is stupid.
No.
I don't want to live to see anything like that, but I'm sure we will. Like that's something I have to become okay with as I get older.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see what good developers can do with an idea surrounding 9/11 that we haven't thought of, or that we can only massage a little bit here because we're not smart enough to make these games or whatever. Because I really do like the idea of even what Greg was saying, something that people that are affected by it later, or what if 9/11 happens and it starts on 9/11, but then you're tasked with stopping the future event that was supposed to happen a few days later? That obviously it's like a kind of a future history kind of thing where it never happens in real life and it never happens in the game because you stopped it in the game.
Right.
And stuff like that. That's there's all sorts of cool things that you can do about it. I think I would be eager and anxious to see someone do something like that, because I think World War II games have kind of lost touch with. Well, there's not a lot of them anymore, but they kind of lost touch with what made them so great to begin with, which was like Wolfenstein was silly, obviously, but then like I remember the original Medal of Honor on PS1 was like such a awesome game. Like I remember loving that game, being like, this is so clever. You're showing your passport and like doing all these like weird things that you would never do in a shooter because it's not all about the violence and the grit. It's about the story. And and all the different operations from Normandy into the Netherlands into Belgium into Germany and
I think there's a way to make, and developers have tried this over the years, but I think there's a way to make that sort of like there was a unnamed attack happened in this major city and now everything is in ruins and fire and rubble and you need to escape and get out. Like there's a way to do that without attaching it to a real life tragedy that's only 13 years old.
Right.
Not like there's a time where it's like, it's been 20 years, make the 9/11 game.
It's free, everybody
Angry
go.
Birds, but with planes.
Jesus.
No, I mean, because I'm worried that like we're going
I'm sure we talk about that in jest in the platforming. I'm sure those games have probably been created.
Sure.
I'm sure if you went into Little Big Planet and searched, you'd find something like that. You'd find iOS knockoffs and stuff like that.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, and my first thought was like, no matter how good it is or how good the idea is, a major publisher wouldn't touch it, because I think about 6 Days in Fallujah, which sounded like an awesome game, just an awesome idea for a game, and Konami was like so worried about it. The game was done, and they were like, we're not putting it out. And that game just exists somewhere and it's done.
Right.
And they never put it out because they were afraid of the backlash. But then I was thinking, well, you don't need a publisher anymore to make these games, and you don't actually need a publisher to make these games visible. You don't even need a publisher to publish on PlayStation platforms. Now, Sony might not want to have something to do with a 9/11 game, but there's opportunity. I think that it could be clever. I think that it can be tasteless. It can be whatever it wants to be. But much like some of these thoughtful World War II games, made it seem like more than just a conflict or more than just fighting the Nazis or the Japanese, so too do I think that it's possible.
Yeah,
that you could do something cool
I would be
with
more worried that, like with most things video games, that media would just run out of hand with the box quote, or just mispurpose everything that's actually there. I mean, like, say you did a game like Gone Home that was sort of this just like, but it took place in an office and it was about two people falling in love, and then at the very last scene, a plane flew in and everyone died.
Yeah.
I mean, would that be touching? Yeah, it'd be incredible, but people would just focus on the part in the end, because I'm sure there was billions of little stories that happened there that one day, that could have been told just like that. Some of them true, some of them not. But I worry that we're not there as a medium yet, and I think the media would just kind of latch onto the bad parts of all that and say, they're profiting off of 9/11, or the game idea you had of the CAE guy is sort of just like the box coat would be like, can you stop 9/11? And I mean, I like the idea.
9/11 changed his life.
Yeah.
So he'll change time.
Exactly.
That's where we're going to end up?
Yeah, sure. No,
I think... What happens, what was the quote that when you take everything away from a man?
When you take everything away from a man, he'll take everything away from you. Ryan Clements. So Ryan Clements classic here on Podcast Beyond. All right. That was a good tell.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys were here to weigh in, and of course, I love you both.
Love you too, buddy.
Users lose all sense of reality and enter another world. Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.